Okay, we're live. Oh, I need a timer. Shoot. There's an app for that, which is good.
Let's see. I'm going to get rid of the Twitters. Actually, I'm going to post this.
Okay. Okay. We are live. We said that. Okay, so let's go. 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 72 of the Security Podcast on the In30 Network. We have an interesting topic today. We're waiting for our guest, so if he doesn't come on, we're sorry, but if he does come on, he's free to come and discuss it with us. We may do an interview after, so he can say his points, but he's probably stuck right now in a council meeting, so we'll just continue without him. He broke a story. By the way, his name is Charlie Kratovil from New Brunswick Today. He broke a story that Rutgers suffered a DDoS attack over the weekend, and we were upset that no one really disclosed it. And Tom's here to argue, hey, wait a second, they didn't need to. And Tom has like real information, real facts behind that, versus me who just mutters to himself at night.
Yeah, and Rutgers wasn't the only one affected by a DDoS attack this week. GitHub has actually been under fire. It just ended, I want to say yesterday, last night sometime, but they've been under fire from a DDoS, a really, really nasty one that looks to be actually set up by the Chinese government. But that is a different episode, and we'll talk about it later.
Well, let's start with let's start really simple. Like, what is a DDoS attack? Just to start off.
Yeah, okay, so the best way I found to explain a DDoS attack to average human beings is imagine you are a teacher in a room of 300 kindergartners, and you have one rule. That rule is if some kindergartner says hello to you, you have to say hello back. And if you don't, you break rules or something. So you have to say hello. But every kindergartner is screaming hello to you as fast as they can. All the time, simultaneously.
And
you're not going to be able to say hi to them back fast enough and get everyone. And what happens is some people just won't get said hello to. Well, in server land, what that means is you've got a bunch of different systems trying to request information from your server. And your server will get overloaded and it won't be able to serve out requests, meaning the normal people, the legitimate users, won't be able to get website data back from your server, while the other people who don't care are still harassing your server, asking for all this data and overloading it. That's basically what it means.
And well, yeah, and that's actually a really good example of that. I was going to say, like, the legitimate kindergartners to say hello to you, but then they have clones that are just, neighbors' kindergartners are coming in, and you're saying, wait a second, I can't deal with you.
Yeah, just hold on a minute.
Yeah. So Rutgers suffered Friday night what it sounded like was a DDoS attack. And that affected all their I said internal. You corrected me, but all their servers, their email, their submission servers, their notes servers, a lot of the stuff that the students need to use to do their work. And people started to complain, how come, what's going on? How come no one's telling them? And it took pushing of I don't want to say the students, but the local independent papers to say, hey, why don't we report this? And you say that's not the right answer.
So I understand where the reporters and the papers and the media is coming from, right? Things are going down on this network for a prolonged period of time, and no one knows why. Yeah, okay, you should probably ask a question, probably get an answer, but not blow it out of proportion. A DDoS attack is, frankly, it's not news. It stopped being news a couple years ago when we realized, hey, DDoSing, it's not clever, it's not hacking, it's not anything really special. It takes some guy who's a little angry who can rent a botnet for a little while to take down any service he wants for any amount of time, as long as you've got the money to pay for it, right?
Let me interrupt you right now. Charlie, you're on. Say hi.
Hello, Chaim. It's an honor and a pleasure to be on your program.
Hey.
So we were just describing what a DDoS attack was at first, and we're going to do this a little live on air. Tom has a few criticisms about the article. So are you ready to throw some punches back?
Sure. We always welcome feedback, and I trust you probably know a lot more about this stuff than I do, but
the more important
I think
question,
the article was factual.
Did you get arrested tonight at the New Brunswick Council meeting?
No, I'm sure you were worried about me, but no, I behaved myself.
Because we were looking, you were a little late, and we started getting nervous that that you did too much investigative reporting, and you ended up behind bars. Justin would have to bail you out.
As any good reporter should. If a reporter hasn't ended up behind bars in one way or another, they're not doing their job right.
So let me ask you. So how did you find out about this?
I got a call from a source. It was, a faculty member at Rutgers, and they said, we're having, problems. It's been going on for a day or two. We love your website. We love what you do. You're the right person for the story. I hope you do a story on it. And then it was not hard to prove there was a widespread problem because people were complaining about it all over, the internet.
Well, did somebody call tech? I mean, isn't it the first step? I'm assuming they did.
Did somebody what?
Did someone call IT and say, how come my internet's not working?
Oh, I think it's clear they were aware of the problem from Friday. I'm sure they got a slew of complaints, but some people just vented on Twitter and Facebook, and that's kind of where I, realized that this was a widespread problem.
So, I mean, Tom was telling me about his escapades back in the day as actually an IT person for a university, and he's saying that they may know, but maybe it's not the best idea, I guess, to report it until they find out everything that was going wrong. I'll let Tom explain that.
Yeah, I used to work for a university as kind of one of their first-line tech support guys. Nothing really high level, nothing really important. But occasionally we would know of network issues or a problem with a particular service that we did have some details, we didn't have the full picture, but we didn't want to prematurely disclose anything, A, because it doesn't solve any problems, and B, because a lot of the time we don't have an ETA. Someone would say, okay, well, it's down, your switch is bugged out, great, congratulations. When are you going to have my class back online? When can they start taking these online tests again? A lot of the time, we have no idea. And, for a DDoS attack, thankfully, I didn't have to experience one of those firsthand. But with a DDoS attack, you have no idea when it's going to end, right? Your service could be hosed up until, 2 weeks from now, and you would have nothing to tell people except, yeah, we're still getting attacked. There's not a lot we can do.
Charlie, did you talk to the person perpetrating the DDoS attack?
I did not have direct communication. I did see they mentioned me in some tweets, but at the end of the day, I think it is unreasonable to expect an ETA, but I think like when my website is down, when New Brunswick Today goes down, all I want to know is that somebody's working on it. I don't expect an ETA, but it helps a lot to know that the problem is, that the problem's been identified, and to get a little information about what the problem is, because I think over the weekend there was it was kind of a rumor situation where people weren't sure if it was a purposeful attack or just a system failure, and that just led to a lot of speculation that could have been easily, people could have been given the truth and it wouldn't have harmed anything. It just would have at least confirmed their fears.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. I don't think there's a requirement for reporting a DDoS. I believe there should be a requirement if personal information is stolen or leaked, or you have evidence that a system's been broken into. But for a DDoS, I don't think it should be required that someone comes out and says, "Hey, we're being actively attacked." Is it nice? Is it probably a little better for your users to know what's going on? Absolutely. When we saw GitHub suffer a DDoS attack earlier this week, they came out right away and they said, "Hey, we're getting attacked. Here's what we know. Here's what we don't know. And if you could help, please chip in.
Right, right. And yeah, just letting people know what services are affected, so that, because people were all worried about their homework was going to not get counted, or they were going to not be able, it's like people were worried unnecessarily about these academic things because of technology.
Tom, can I ask you, does it actually hurt if let's say GitHub or Rutgers or whatever comes out and says, hey, we've been DDoSed? Can that be used maliciously to let more people pile on and keep this going on longer?
Frankly, it depends on the DDoS. So, a denial of service attack, another way, we gave the example of the kindergartners, another way to kind of spin a DDoS attack is it can have the same effect on you as, a picket line, a protest line outside of a legitimate business. You've got a bunch of people interrupting, causing a bunch of ruckus, and preventing legitimate customers, your legitimate users, from getting access to the services on the other side of the wall, right? It has the same exact effect. So if there's a good reason to have the protest, if there's a good reason the site is being DDoSed or taken offline, yeah, it could call attention to it, and it could bring more people to the side of the protesters or the people attacking the site. Now, in the case of Rutgers, I haven't heard of any real reason except that someone just wanted to prove that they could.
Oh, yeah. Charlie, you heard Targum? You were reporting that the Targum knew about this?
Yes, I'll be honest. My jaw hit the floor when I read the Targum story. The Targum remained silent all weekend as this was playing out. Even their Monday issue did not even have anything about it, even though it was the biggest story. And then Tuesday they come out with the bombshell that they've actually been in touch with the hacker, and he had warned them about an attack that happened 4 weeks prior, and that I tweeted at the author of the article and I said, why didn't you put out a story then? And they said, oh, well, because Don Smith, the CIO of Rutgers, asked us not to because he wanted to consult with the police. It's one thing to keep it quiet for those 3 or 4 weeks, but then when you see an actual attack playing out and people unsure of whether it's an attack or not, and widespread people being affected, I thought it was really a bizarre choice not to go ahead with it, because it was a huge story for New Brunswick Today, and it would have been if the Targum had put it out over the weekend, but they sat on it all the way until Tuesday when the attack was over.
Yeah, and I can understand kind of wanting to put that off, pending an investigation, but what are you really going to find? What are people really going to do? And it's, you could ask Twitter to, give you the guy's IP under a subpoena or a warrant and do more investigation from then. But if the attack was planned, the next couple of days, it's a lot of legal hoops to jump through to be able to prevent something. So I don't know. I'm kind of on both sides on this one.
Well,
yeah, no, I get it. It's just, it's newsworthy, and it's the type of thing that I don't think a Targum article would have affected the outcome here. The guy wasn't going to behave differently because the Targum said he did one on March 4th or not. They just kept it quiet because Rutgers asked them to, which I think is, as a journalist, I didn't like that decision, but also it's unconscionable that Rutgers was pushing them around like that. I don't think that was the ethical thing to do.
I mean, you're saying it's credible. Do we really know it's credible? Is it one of those millions of credible sources that come out saying, oh, be careful here, we're going to hack the system, we're going to hack the system?
In this case, the Targum reported that the chief information officer of Rutgers said that it was credible, and they predicted an attack, and an attack came, and then Targum just sat on it. And
there's still no comment from Rutgers saying anything that they knew
about it.
Well,
they did get back to me today, and this is an exclusive, an In30 exclusive. They finally named the cybersecurity firm that they've hired to investigate their vulnerabilities, and it is called Fishnet. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with it, but Fishnet is the company that they hired, spent 6 figures on to try to research their own vulnerability.
Well, let me ask Tom this. Tom, I mean, is there any way to stop a DDoS attack? Don't you have to just wait for it to end, right?
There are so many ways to execute a DDoS attack, and depending on the way your servers are being attacked, you can try to mitigate it, right? But if it's something we saw a really clever DDoS attack on GitHub this week. They had to invent countermeasures for. Really cool stuff. A little too technical to get into on this episode, but depending on the type of attack, yeah, you can try to mitigate it, but most of the time you can't, because it's very difficult to be able to tell legit traffic of a kindergartner trying to come up to you to say hello legitimately, or the hundreds of them doing it just to be annoying, right? It's really hard to try to see because all the users look the same. And there are some more advanced things like SYN cookies or other advanced methods to try to block this stuff, but it takes equipment, it takes time, it takes testing to deploy this stuff, and if you find out 48 hours before an attack, there's not a lot you can do except wait it out.
Charlie, what are they trying to find out? So they've hired this firm to boost infrastructure, to find out who it is? I mean, do we know what we're paying them for?
Not exactly, and they're not saying. They really refuse to answer any questions about cybersecurity on security grounds. So I think they made a mistake by doing that, because I had some really good questions that they should have probably answered. But at the end of the day, they're behind the times at Rutgers, and that's not good for a university. But I saw your tweets. It's not sexy. Cybersecurity is not something that people want to invest in and plan ahead for. So it's part of a larger problem. It's not just Rutgers that is deferring these types of investments.
I mean, we've been saying on this show, 72 weeks now, that security is one of those things that you have to go to your boss and say, I need a lot of money, but there's nothing I'm going to show for you.
Exactly. I need this large pile of money to keep things looking the same tomorrow as they do today, and that doesn't make good business sense. It's not a good return on investment. But I don't think Rutgers is behind the times at all. As a matter of fact, I think they're ahead of the curve on this one. The fact that they've hired any security firm, and they were talking about it last year even, it means that they are way far ahead of their peers.
And Charlie, this is where Tom's going to tell you.
One way to look at it. I mean, I just know that they're the people who developed SSL. Their own website. You put Rutgers.edu in, and it doesn't get the best possible rating. It's
So let me go into the technical details on that, because it's a lot of technical stuff. So Qualsys didn't invent SSL, right? They run SSL Labs. It's another tester of sorts, but they weren't exactly the originators of SSL. That goes way back into ancient internet history that I'm not going to cover here. But I've got some notes here, so let me run through these. One of the biggest ones that you point out is they do support the RC4 cipher, which we know has been broken academically in several fantastic ways. Now, not completely broken, and those attacks are hard to pull off, right? Especially for an internet connection, especially for someone that's not actively on your local network. But what Rutgers has in common with Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and other giant tech sites that we would assume are on the cutting edge of security, they all use the RC4 cipher. Not exclusively, but they all support it. It's at the bottom of their list. They don't want to use it by default, but the way SSL works is the server says, hey, here's a list of ciphers and stuff that I support, and your browser goes, okay, cool, here's the stuff that I support. And then they knock off the ones that they can't talk with, and they choose the best security out of the ones they share. RC4 is always near the bottom of the list, but it has to be there. So RC4 has to be there for old browsers, for, we're talking old stuff, IE10, IE6, really old browsers that, frankly, are still in use by many of these students. Rutgers has a responsibility, not just to the students, but to taxpayers, to make sure that every student can access the services, every student can access email, Blackboard, and other things. Security is not the first priority, and it shouldn't be. They need to support RC4 so people can keep connecting to those sites.
the better question is how many Rutgers computers still run XP? That's where you can make a huge leap to say their security is not up, being XP was unsupported. And I would venture to guess there's a whole ton of back office closets with secretaries in the back still running Windows XP.
Right.
And that's where we can say, oh, RC4 is actually needed because there's nothing on XP that can support something higher.
Exactly, and you might need IE6 to run some weird ancient education app. Back when I was working at the college help desk, years back, we had stuff that only ran on IE6, right? And it was a miracle it ran on something as recent as IE6, and this was in the days of Windows 7 when it was out, for a while. But I understand the way it looks, but it's not as terrible as it seems because Google gets a B. Facebook gets a B. Microsoft gets a B. There are tons of sites that my site gets a B. By cutting out RC4 and by cutting out TLS 1.0, you slash the number of users that can use your service. Google doesn't want to do it. It doesn't make financial sense.
It's not so much that they support TLS 1.0. It's that they don't support 1.2 and 1.1. So if I'm using 1.2, I have to use 1.0. And that's not a best practice. I mean,
it's
better,
not.
Right?
It's not a best practice, but 99% of websites out there are supporting TLS 1.0. Whereas for the people supporting TLS 1.2, it's 56. Hardly anyone is supporting the latest and greatest TLS. They should. I completely agree. They absolutely should have that as an option. But saying that TLS 1.0 is the most broken thing in the world and no one uses it, just about everyone supports TLS 1.0. Yes, there are attacks. Yes, it's not the best security model. It's definitely not a best practice. But in order to support older clients, you absolutely need it. So for the list of browsers here, TLS 1.1 and 1.2 wasn't supported by default by Internet Explorer until version 11. That was released in October of 2013. Really, in terms of browser years, browsers stick around forever. That's forever, right? That's IE11 hasn't been out for a very long time. We go to OS 10. Safari didn't support it until October of 2013. Chrome didn't support it until around that time. To expect every student to have a machine that's 2 years old or newer is kind of a logical leap they cannot make. They have to support TLS 1.0. And they have to offer it as one of your main connection options, or else they get rid of those users.
Well, let me ask. So that was the other thing. Well, there was another thing on there that there was a man-in-the-middle attack that I saw. Anybody?
The diagram?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was really just an explanation of how, if you were to circumvent RC4, you could use a man-in-the-middle attack. Now, no modern web browser is going to choose.
Microsoft has said about it.
Yes, they did. Keep in mind, Microsoft released that. The MSDN blog site it supports the RC4 cipher. Right? It's not exclusive. It's not the only cipher it uses. But they themselves use it because they can't afford to cut off those users. Because even the users that have browsers that ancient need to get the information to say, maybe I should just download Firefox or Chrome.
Well, let's ask Tom this. Okay, so let's say what would you recommend? So instead of paying whatever you said, Charlie, $100,000, $200,000, we have Tom who's free right now for some sponsorship deal. He can tell us how to do this for much better. If you're telling this large 50,000 plus student university that spans the entire state of New Jersey how to make things more secure, I mean, what would you start with?
Well, and I'm sure for the six-figure sum, they're not just going to go in and do what I would do and update Apache and make sure your web servers support the latest stuff and make sure you've got the most recent patch of OpenSSL. They're not going to do that stuff. That stuff is easy, and frankly, IT can take care of it. They should update that stuff, but it's especially in the university system, especially in public sector. getting updates into systems that are already working is like pulling teeth. It is horribly difficult to do. Where you'll see Windows 2000 still in use today in a lot of universities, just simply because they're still working. Why would we replace them? Not the right answer, but it's what happens. But this company that they're paying six figures to, I'm sure they're going in, they're doing penetration tests, they're running network scans, they're getting services, they're doing site analysis, they might even do a physical pen test, right? They might wear fake security badges and try to sneak back into the server room. You're going to get a lot more than just me going in and updating your servers. I'm sure the money is not being wasted, and the fact that they're doing this at all is, I think, all the more in their favor, right? This company is going to say, hey, we know you've got to support these guys with old systems because you've got a bunch of them laying around, and we know students use anything and everything they can get their hands on because they're students. They can't afford new computers every year. But you should probably update this or turn on support for TLS 1.1, 1.2. You should look at deprecating RC4 sometime in the next 3 to 5 years and helping your students get off of that. But I really think that them spending, especially this huge amount of money on a security firm at all, on anything security related, they could have bought a firewall with it, and I would have been applauding them. It's really nice to see them actually putting a foot forward and before something has happened, saying we need to be more secure.
Well, that's the problem. Now we're acting retroactively. After something's happened, let's fix it.
Well, in the article you stated, wasn't it in 2014 they committed this amount of money to a security firm?
It's the last line.
It was in response to attacks at other schools. And then they did have a DDoS attack in November also. So shortly before their first of 3 attacks, they were already moving in that direction. Now, what I want to know is whether this company is worth it, and whose brother works for that company.
Now, when it comes to general corruption like that, I can't speak to it. I've never worked with these guys, but I would really hope.
Outside of New Jersey, so Tom doesn't understand corruption like we understand corruption.
I am in Ohio, and the most corruption we have is we've got Congress, but that's another story, another show entirely.
And is there, Charlie? Have you heard any response, any blowback from professors that are really steadfast against? Well, you should have handwritten this paper, or is everyone really understanding? Have you heard anything?
I've heard secondhand. Some people said that their professors didn't give them extensions that they deserved because of this problem. The vast majority of people, though, have said, "Oh, thank God I got an extension. I wasn't going to do that anyway." And now I get a little extension. So people had very mixed feelings about this. As you can imagine, a university of 50,000 people, there's some real, academic-minded people who were very concerned and weren't getting the answers they needed, and they were really flipping out. And I'm sure for most of them it worked out, but for some people it might not have.
You know what, Friday night, I don't know how much homework I ever did on a Friday night.
Yeah. This is true.
I'm hoping that the community, I'm hoping the professors, the students understand that things like this do happen, and Rutgers has now stated, or you're stating that no information has been leaked to our knowledge. So you know what? I do applaud that on some level.
Well, a DDoS attack isn't clever.
To our knowledge,
it's not a hack.
Oh, Charlie.
Go ahead. Sometimes DDoS attacks can be cover for an actual breach, and sometimes the breaches go undetected. So it's not impossible that there was a breach and they can't detect it because they are too busy overwhelmed with the DDoS.
And those people aren't bragging about it on Twitter and talking to reporters about how they're going to take down Rutgers' email server, right? It's a different class of attack. This style of DDoS attack isn't the type where they want to get in, they want to get information, they want to sell stuff on Russian underground black market websites. This is a type of attack where someone wants to decide to spray paint the side of a building and say, guys, yeah, I did that, right? Look at that. I totally took down the email server. Everyone's flipping out. It's great. They're two completely different styles of attack and two completely different perpetrators. When you look at security, when you look at attacks, you have to consider not only what you're protecting, but who wants access, right? The guy's selling personal information on Russian black market sites, and the guy's trying to steal IP in China, and the guy just trying to cause some havoc are three completely different entities with completely different goals in mind. This is going to be the third. This is the guy that just wants to get in and cause some trouble.
Well, I hope you're right. The university did finally confirm that they believe there was no breach. But what they said at first was not that. They were saying that they did not detect a breach, and a lot of people received a very different message. They said, "Oh, well, there was no breach. Didn't you hear?" But that's not true, and it was, I think, purposely that was the intent, was to quell people's fears. Effectively do that for me, at least.
Look, Charlie, I agree with you. I think as soon as they found out that there was something going wrong, something should have been said that there's something and we're aware of it. Just really simple.
There's trouble on the network and we're not entirely sure what's happening, but something's happening.
Staying silent.
And it probably would have mitigated the amount of people calling them up or tweeting them or reaching out if they had put out something preemptively and said, "Don't call us. We're already on it."
Right, and they should have. But at the end of the day, I think the SSL piece was a little misguided, because Rutgers SSL is as safe as Microsoft and Google, and actually a little bit more secure than Facebook's at the end of the day.
So anyway, at that point, I want to wrap it up because we are over time. I want to thank Charlie for coming down. I want everyone to go to New Brunswick Today. And is there a donate button on the site?
Not yet. We'll get it. We just finished our big fundraising campaign, so we'll put it back soon.
So we just have to wait to the next quarter. And next quarter, Justin swears you're going to accept Bitcoin, right?
I hope so. We want to accept Bitcoin.
So anyway,
everyone,
have a good night, and we will see you next week.
Thanks for coming on the show.